Somewhere in your body, right now, there's a piece of a species that supposedly died out 40,000 years ago. Not a fossil. Actual, living DNA, sitting inside your own cells, doing things to your immune system, your skin, even how well you sleep. And if you're not from sub-Saharan Africa, there's a very good chance it's already in you. So here's a question. If Neanderthals really went extinct, how are they still inside us? For most of the last century, the story was simple. Neanderthals showed up in Europe and Asia first, adapted to the cold, built a life there for hundreds of thousands of years, and then, around 40,000 years ago, modern humans arrived. And within a few thousand years, the Neanderthals were just gone. Extinct. Wiped off the map. And scientists spent decades trying to figure out exactly what killed them. First theory, climate. Europe was going through wild temperature swings, and maybe Neanderthals just couldn't keep up. Reasonable. Except it didn't hold up well. Neanderthals had already survived multiple ice ages before modern humans ever showed up. If climate alone could kill them, it should have happened long before it did. Then there was the volcano theory, a massive eruption blanketing Europe in ash right around the time of their disappearance. Dramatic, cinematic, and mostly abandoned once the timing didn't line up cleanly enough. More recently, a space physicist actually proposed that a flip in Earth's magnetic field 41,000 years ago, something called the Lost Champ event, let in a flood of cosmic radiation that Neanderthals couldn't survive as well as we could. It made headlines. It's also probably not the answer either. Then came the inbreeding theory, the idea that Neanderthal populations had gotten so small and isolated that they were breeding with close relatives, and the resulting health problems slowly killed the species off from the inside. There's a real skeleton behind this one. A family, found together in a Spanish cave called El Sidron, adults and children, all Neanderthal, all buried in the same collapsed passage. When researchers examined their bones, they found something unsettling, subtle skeletal abnormalities, the kind you'd expect to see if the people in that cave were closely related to each other, generation after generation, with nowhere else to go. For a while, this felt like the answer. A species slowly folding in on itself, running out of new blood, running out of options. Except, a study published just this year went back and checked the bigger picture. Instead of one cave, researchers looked at the genomes of the very last Neanderthal populations that ever existed, scattered across Europe, right before the end. And they found no sign of the genetic decline this theory depends on. No shrinking gene pool across the board. No population-wide collapse in health. El Sidron, it turns out, might just be one unlucky, isolated group, not proof of a species-wide death spiral. Whatever killed Neanderthals, it apparently wasn't a slow genetic rot from the inside. So one by one, the tidy explanations kept falling apart, which means either we're missing something huge, or we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. And that's what they are arguing. Not, what killed the Neanderthals, but did anything kill them at all? Here's the twist. Homo sapiens and Neanderthals weren't strangers passing each other in Europe. They met, repeatedly, over tens of thousands of years, in the same caves, the same valleys, sometimes even the same generations. At a site called Tinshemmet Cave, researchers found evidence that Neanderthals and early modern humans were actively living alongside each other, sharing tools and techniques, for an extended stretch of time. Not two species locked in a struggle for the same territory, but neighbors. And neighbors, it turns out, had children together. A lot of them, actually. Recent genetic mapping, built using AI-assisted analysis of ancient genomes, has traced interbreeding between our two species stretching back roughly 200,000 years. Not a single event. A relationship, repeated over and over, for longer than Homo sapiens has even been the only human species walking around. It's two populations that were tangled together, on and off, for nearly the entire time they coexisted. And here's the part that changes everything. A team of researchers took all of this, the repeated contact, the recurring interbreeding, the small size of Neanderthal populations compared to the much larger and faster-growing modern human population, and built a mathematical model of what happens next. No war required. No catastrophe. Just ordinary contact. And the model showed something remarkable. Over roughly 10 to 30,000 years, the smaller population can be almost completely genetically absorbed into the larger one. Not killed off. Diluted. Folded in. Merged. Until there's no meaningful line left between them and us. In other words, Neanderthals may not have lost a war with modern humans. They might have just become us, one relationship, one generation, one child at a time, until there weren't enough purely Neanderthal people left for anyone to notice the moment it happened. And if that sounds like a nice theory with no proof, here's where it stops being theoretical. Scientists have actually found the receipts sitting in your own genome. None of this was checkable until surprisingly recently. For most of the 20th century, Neanderthal DNA was considered a lost cause. Ancient DNA degrades fast, and anything preserved in 40,000-year-old bone was assumed too broken, too contaminated, to ever read cleanly. Then geneticist Svante Pääbo spent 2 decades refining the technique anyway, piecing together a working draft of the Neanderthal genome bone fragment by bone fragment. When his team finally laid the full sequence beside modern human DNA, it didn't show 2 separate genomes with a clean line between them. It showed overlap, real, unmistakable, shared sequences that could only mean interbreeding had happened and left fingerprints. Pääbo won a Nobel Prize for it in 2022. Suddenly, extinct wasn't just a historical claim. It was testable, and the evidence kept accumulating. There's a stretch of DNA on chromosome 3, inherited from Neanderthals, that raises your risk of hospitalization from a severe respiratory virus, the exact stretch linked to worse COVID-19 outcomes. A few chromosomes over, on chromosome 12, a different Neanderthal variant does the opposite, lowering that risk. Same extinct species. 2 completely different gifts, both still deciding outcomes for people getting sick right now, 40,000 years later. Neanderthal genes still shape skin tone, pain sensitivity, sleep patterns, mood, even fertility in people today. And it doesn't stop with Neanderthals. In Tibet, a gene lets people breathe comfortably at extreme altitude, and it didn't come from any human ancestor. It came from the Denisovans, another extinct relative who interbred with our ancestors on the other side of the world. 2 extinct species, 2 separate unions, still quietly steering their descendants' bodies today. So think about what that means. Every time someone gets a mild case of a virus because of a gene they never asked for, every time someone tans instead of burns, there's a real chance that's a 40,000-year-old decision made by a species we were taught to think of as gone. Which brings us back to that word, extinct. We use it like it means erased, like a light switching off. But the newest evidence shows something stranger, a slow-motion merger, where 2 kinds of humans sat by the same fires, raised children together, and stopped being 2 things at all. Neanderthals didn't vanish. They walked into us, quietly, until the line between them and us simply dissolved. And if you want to be the person in the room who actually knows this stuff, hit subscribe.